So I don't know if I've really said this before, but I did a large portion of my job for the last 4.5 years, 5 years at the Adult Day Center was that I did seating and wheeled mobility for people with neurodegenerative disease. And so I'm very, very familiar with wheelchair positioning and different kinds of wheelchair issues that come up. So this assignment it's a good fit. I'm gonna apologize. It's getting late, so I probably shouldn't be recording right now. So if I trip over my words a lot, but I promise I wanted to get this out to you guys tonight because I know a lot of you are working on it. So you read through the instructions a little bit. So let's go down here, and basically you have this so you have this grid here, and it gives you options for different kind of wheelchairs. And going through the wheelchair lectures, you should be familiar with most of these now. I would also encourage you, if you don't know what it is, YouTube it. There's tons of great videos that are out there about showing like what a Tilton space really does and what it looks like and how it fully moves through the entire range of motion. And I think that's one really big thing to keep in mind is that Tilton space, when it comes to wheelchairs, Tilton space stays at 90 degrees. This probably looks really awkward to you guys. It feels awkward to me. So it stays at 90 degrees. Okay, so you're sitting at 90 degrees. Here's the back, here's the seat pan. When you do a Tilton space, the entire chair is moving and tilting the person back so that they're going to be taking the pressure off of their sitting surface, because that puts them at an extreme high risk for skin breakdown. So that's Tilton space. Tilton space comes back up. It moves as one unit and allows for pressure relief. A recline is basically where the back just moves. So the back will open or close. You can tilt the person back, but that seat stays at 9, like your seat pan stays still. And it either takes it from a 90-degree angle to more than that, to like 110, 120, or 30, to even, if you got them laying down, 180. So that's the difference between a recline and a Tilton space that goes all the way back. So keep that in mind as you're thinking. A Tilton space would be used for pressure relief, fatigue management. A recline is going to be used more for if a person has fatigue, it could be used throughout the day, but maybe if they have issues with, I guess I'm trying to think what the best option is, because just depending, it might be good for comfort, contracture issues, hip, if like somebody has a broken hip and they need to make sure they're keeping up a 90-degree angle at least, then sometimes popping them back a little bit with a recline would be helpful. If somebody tends to fall forward out of their chair, opening up the chair a little bit into more of a recline can be helpful for that. So I know that's typically one that will throw a lot of people on this assignment is knowing the difference there. The leg rest, make sure that you recognize that adjustable, it can be like lengthwise, which is pretty important. Elevating is really important.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Just think about as your legs are elevating, that you want to keep in mind, if you have an elevating leg rest, you almost always want to make sure that they have heel loops and calf pads, because if you elevate that leg and you don't have a calf pad or a heel loop, that foot's going to fall right off of the elevated or the foot pad. So especially if you have somebody who they've just had a hip replacement, don't have a lot of muscle control, then that foot's going to fall off. So you really don't ever want to do elevating leg rest with the intent of elevating without heel loops and calf pads. Armrest, a couple things to keep in mind. So the regular armrests they're great because I have lots of I have lots of real estate to push off of, because they come up far enough that if I have issues with bringing my arms all the way back to push up and I need more ability to push up beside myself, then it's good to have regular length arms. The desk arms are more from a functional perspective. They allow me to get closer. If I'm a full-time wheelchair user, the desk arms might be helpful because then I can actually get up to a table and do my eating. I can get up to a table and do my schoolwork. So those are things to think about as you're picking your armrests. The removable versus adjustable. Adjustable are always helpful because in order to get a good ergonomic fit, if you have somebody who's going to be living in their chair, you want to be able to adjust the arms to where they need them to be, or else you're going to run into different orthopedic issues. Removable arms are really important to think about if you have a full-time wheelchair user that needs to be able to do a slide board transfer out of the chair. That's really important to think about. What kind of transfers are they going to be doing? Are they going to be able to clear an armrest that's not removable? When it comes to brakes are pretty straightforward. They're either regular or you have a brake extension for somebody who wouldn't be able to reach down very far or needs a visual reminder that they have brakes. Cushions. I get the most questions about the cushions, and the big issue with the cushions is, they're so different. So here's my little walkthrough with some of the cushions. The foam and egg crate, that is for a very casual wheelchair user, somebody who's not going to be sitting there, has the ability to do their own weight shifting on a regular basis, whether that's leaning side to side, moving in their chair, pushing up with their arms. That gives them ability to have a release of pressure on their bottom. So you could give that very casual wheelchair, short-term wheelchair user some foam or egg crate. A contoured gel cushion. The contoured means that it is constructed with foam on the bottom. So it starts with a more firm foam base. And then the foam base is actually like carved out so that it has like a gluteal hole in the back, and then also some carved out pieces for the thighs, and then it's filled with gel. That gel will allow a person to sink down into it, and it affords a much better pressure relief. The downside is if they're like with gel, you have to move the gel a lot of times, and so if you have somebody who needs a lot of assistance, most people would not be able to, if they are a fairly dependent person, would not be able to move that gel themselves, then would need a caregiver to do that. The Rojo is an air cushion. It's the most popular type of air cushion out there. So air is probably the most optimal if you have bed sores and different kind of ulcers on your sitting surface. Downside is they're very high maintenance. So for somebody who, again, isn't cognitively intact and able to be regularly tuned into monitoring the air, that could be an issue. Somebody with really poor trunk balance, that could be an issue sometimes, because as you go to do a slide board transfer out of there, the air, you scoot to one side, and air will go, if you press down on one side, it all flips to the other side, and so it can flop out of your chair as the air is moving. The firm flat seat with a crate. Okay, so if you have somebody who has like a lot of obliquity in their hips, so like your hips should sit kind of equal. Well, some people, they tilt a little bit like this, or they tend to lean to the side. If you want to even those hips out a little bit, by putting something that's firm and flat underneath an egg crate will help to stabilize their hips. You still get a little bit of that with that contoured gel cushion also, because that foam underneath the gel is thick enough that it really helps to even out the hips into a more regulated sitting surface. The abductor wedge is important, that if you have somebody who has hip precautions, but they are tending to want to cross their legs, that can help. If you have somebody who wants to slide forward in their chair and get a little posterior pelvic tilt and start sliding forward, that abductor wedge will pop them back up into place and prevent them from sliding out. A wedge cushion would do the same type of thing, where like it's big and built up in the front, and then it's narrow in the back. It's like a triangle, and it really forces their hips back into posterior pelvic tilt, and that can be used a lot if somebody's having it with falling out the front of their chair. The downside is to the wedge and the abductor wedge is that if you have somebody who's having trouble transferring, that can make it that much more difficult for them to get up out of their chair when a therapist is trying to work with them or somebody's trying to get them out of their chair. So it prevents them from falling out of their chair, but it also might be an issue with long-term, like anybody helping them get out of their chair. And then some of the miscellaneous things that just to go over real quick would be like headrest. Pretty much anybody with fatigue issues needs a headrest. That's definitely more of somebody who's living in their chair needs something like that. Lateral supports, anybody who's got that thoracic lean, they have trunk weakness, again, but those are more long-term users. If they're not going to be a long-term user of a chair of some kind, then you don't want to put lateral supports on. You want to look like what you can do to address the core weakness that they have. A lap board is a good alternative if you have somebody who keeps wanting to fall out of their chair. Sorry, this is not wanting to go down. So the lap board would go in front of you, goes over your chair. That's good for somebody who, like I said, is trying to get up continually. It's not necessarily a restraint. Somebody has poor arm motion and they want to be able to do activities close to their body. Trouble pulling up to a table or a chair. So somebody who has no length arm rests, but yet they need something functional in front of them so they can eat off of that would be an option for them. O2 holder, obviously, if they have oxygen that they need. Hand rim projections. So those basically are just like little spokes that come out from the side of the wheels that help people to get a better grip. I've had clients with like some arthritic hands, poor hand function, not a lot of really good grip strength. Use those because it just allows you to not have to grip the rims as tightly to get a real good propulsion forward. A contour back. Typically, you're only going to see a contour back if you have somebody who is living in their chair or if they have a significant scoliosis or kyphosis, something like that, special back needs. That is for somebody who's more of a full-time wheelchair user. A seatbelt. Personally, this is my thought on seatbelts, that if you have anybody who's going to use a seatbelt in the community, they need to have it on. However, if you're in a facility, you can't use seatbelts because they're considered restraints, and so you have to have like a doctor sign off on it every 24 hours that you're going to use it. However, like I said, I think if you're a full-time wheelchair user, what I've always done is just that if you're using it in the community, you need it. And the real important thing with a seatbelt is, especially like if it's a power chair or, even some wheelchairs, if they're going pretty quick on a hill, if they hit like a bump in the sidewalk and their wheel catches just the right way, it will eject them out of their seat. And it can be really, really detrimental. So seatbelts are pretty crucial for the community dwelling person who uses a wheelchair. And then an alarm system. So a seat alarm is something that it would go underneath the client. As they go to stand, you would either hear an alarm sound, bells chime, or sometimes even loved ones can like record a message of, Dad, you need to sit down, or call for a nurse, use your call light, depending on what type they have. So that's kind of an alarm system that you can use that they're referring to in this also. There's lots and lots of other pieces too that, are used in wheelchairs and seating and wheel mobility also, but unfortunately they're not all on here right now. So I'm going to go to the next page. Oh, this also is giving me issues. Sorry, guys. So as far as the assignments go, hopefully that helps a little bit with explaining, making you guys see, okay, now we're going to have this client and knowing a little bit more about some of the options that you have. What you need to do for this assignment is you need to go through and you need to highlight what type of wheelchairs in each category are most appropriate. So for this 81-year-old woman who fell in her garden while picking tomatoes, she broke her hip, total hip replacement, she has kyphosis of the spine, edema in her legs. She will be using a wheelchair for mobility within the hospital long-term care center and is in rehab. She does not plan to use a wheelchair when she goes home, although she realizes she may need some support for walking